Welcome to MRE Uncut, where we'll give you real and practical insights into the real estate scene in Melbourne. We'll discuss what's happening in the industry, all backed by MRE's history of over 30 years in the game. With that said, let's jump into this week's episode of MRE Uncut.
Welcome back to another MRE podcast. My name's Stephen Fitzsimon. I'm here today with Peter Hoymans.
G'day, everyone.
And we've also got our first guest to the podcast. We have Shaun Farrell from Talogy.
Hi, everyone.
Talogy was previously known by a different name, Peter.
Well, Caliper, the Caliper Report. And even though they have rebranded, I still call them Caliper.
Yeah.
But it's Talogy.
Yeah,
Let's just make that
T-A-L-O-G-Y.
Yeah, so if after this you're trying to find Shaun and the incredible tools that we're going to talk about in a minute, don't Google Caliper, Google Talogy.
You could probably Google Caliper.
Where, just so we can get that off the bat?
We're all over the country, but our office in Melbourne is on Spencer Street.
Spencer Street.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm a bit excited about this one, Steve. As you know,
I know.
This is sort of close to my heart.
Very.
We started on how Caliper has worked in the business and helped us scale the business last time.
Yes.
And we used a couple of specific examples, I think myself and the great Ms. Pascoe.
Yes, we did.
Might have mentioned your good self as well.
Little bits.
But I think the bit that's missing for the listeners on that first piece we did was really the science behind the Caliper Report.
And we're probably not best suited
to
talk about
the history behind the Caliper Report, because I'm an advocate, a massive advocate for the power of it and what it can do and how it can help you build your business. And that's why we have the great man, Shaun, here. Tell us, what is Caliper?
Yeah, so Caliper is a psychometric assessment. What that really means, it's a personality assessment. So these things are designed to essentially identify a person's innate characteristics. What are their natural strengths, what comes naturally to them, and what doesn't. And so companies use tools like this, and there's thousands of them out there, to essentially understand the people they're bringing in a bit better. What is this person bringing to the table? What do we need to support them with? What do we need to develop for them? And what type of role are they best suited to? So when using them, they're great, but they have to be coupled with a really good hiring process all the way through as well. But the tool itself is really designed to get underneath the surface of an interview performance and really look at the hard wiring and the characteristics of a person.
But if I think of these personality profiles and DISC profiles and so forth, what's the differentiating point for somebody who's not really familiar with either or either as to?
So you mean there's the Hogan, there's Briggs and something else. There's
Myers something.
As Shaun said, there's like a heap of them.
Yeah.
Is Caliper any different, or is it similar but different?
Similar but different, right? So we own 300 proprietary tools at Talogy. There's so many out there. So you've mentioned DISC. That's probably the most well-known globally. It's a really good tool for what it was built for. It's called a type-based indicator. So you got your DISC, where do you sit on that? Mm-hmm. And it's really terrific for team building activities. So if you're running a team day with an agency, use that. It's really well suited for that. Well, you mentioned Hogan as well, and that's sort of more similar to the Caliper tool. These are trait-based assessments.
Yes.
So it's really more in-depth, more information, and what we're able to do with that more information is then look at the exact requirements of a job, so whether it's residential sales agent, whatever it may be. We can look at the traits and how they're likely to play out in a particular job with a bit more precision. So I think it's important for people to always investigate which tool is actually going to suit the purpose, because if you use the wrong tool for recruitment, for example, you're just not going to get a predictive result. And that's the whole premise, is these things are meant to help you predict the performance of someone before they start at your business.
So from 2006 to, let's say, 2016, we had an extraordinary growth path. We had a fabulous collection of people via the Caliper profile. That's not to say that we don't now, but I'm just using that initial first decade because I'm in the real estate space. I believe we're definitely an early mover, and in fact, I'm not even sure there's another agency yet, unless you know of one that is using Caliper as prevalently as we had and are currently, in the 10 years we were using, I'm not sure, we would have done a couple of hundred. In a real estate sense, you have a different caliper report for different roles. So in other words, it's not one report fits all.
Correct.
Can you just explain that a little bit? Because I reckon that's important. Because let's say in a real estate business, you've got leaders, you've got the CEO, you've got the financial controller, you've got property managers, leasing guys, business development, administration, and they're all require quite, like, for example, a salesperson's traits are completely different from an administration set of traits that we would require.
I think another good example for that is a salesperson and a sales manager. Because, traditionally a lot of agencies sort of go, the best salesperson, you put them into the sales manager role, and they might not suit as well. So analysing that. So
yeah, it's an important point, because the science behind that is that different personality characteristics lead to success in different types of roles. So if you take a sales agent or even an entrepreneur, for example, they share very similar characteristics. Which would be what? Give us a... They're really strong communicators for a start. They're naturally assertive. They're comfortable standing behind their point of view, which helps in a sales environment to push past objections. In a leadership environment, standing firm and pushing forcefully when you're communicating. They're naturally persuasive. They're high risk takers. They're usually terrible with their attention to detail is a natural characteristic of them. And they're sort of the performance drivers for success in that job. Yeah. But if you take someone with that profile and put them in a property management role, that's a disaster waiting to happen. You've got a role that is the performance drivers over on that side are really more cautious, more conscientious, more service focused. You're really trying to put a round peg in a square hole kind of thing there. So the use of the tool and the reason why we've built out these specific reports for all these different jobs in real estate is going, well, we want to measure a person for this exact job, not just measure who they are.
Did we help you with that originally a little bit?
We did some research, probably around the time we were working together in the early 2000s.
I'm talking over 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. We redid the residential sales research again, no change in 15 years.
Interesting.
Excluding one thing. We found the importance of emotional intelligence is increasing over time.
Wow.
So
that's big.
If you think about agents 20 years ago, just knock down the door and go, yeah, I'm looking at you. These days...
Never kicked anyone's door in.
No.
I did put my foot in the door though.
What we look for a bit more now is a stronger capacity to connect with people, understand different audiences more effectively. That helps more. But if you look at property investment managers, we did a bit of research there too. We found that the top property managers across Australia and New Zealand in particular shared, out of the 21 personality traits we measured, they shared 5 consistent traits.
Oh, I'd love to know what they are.
So cautiousness was one.
Yes.
Self-structure, which is a capacity to run my own day, plan my time, stick to my plan.
Yeah.
External structure, which is I enjoy an environment where there are rules, procedures, guidelines, legislation in place.
Yep.
Accommodation, which is a service motivation, so building relationships with property investors and tenants, that sort of thing, that helped. And the differentiating factor between those that were superstars and those that weren't that great was the trait of urgency, which was a natural motivation to do things quickly. So those with high urgency could keep up with a really heavy portfolio, getting things done quickly, getting things off their desk. But those with a lower score tended to have things pile up and create quite a bit of stress and anxiety for them.
Because high urgency isn't that common. Let's in the property management profile, what would you rate as medium urgency and high urgency?
Well, in what way?
Just the number, because I know what my urgency is, and my urgency is a bit of a curse because it's 99 out of 100, which is
join the club.
A bit over the top, right?
I think the three of us sitting here are all pretty high.
It's a bit OTT, and it can actually people that aren't in that space they think you'd be crazy.
Yeah,
you just and I think PMs at that score would also probably it's too high. So I'm just interested in what range, when you say the higher range, is that sort of,
It's over 60th percentile compared to the Australian New Zealand workforce.
Okay.
The difference with property managers versus probably sales is they have high thoroughness, attention to detail as well.
Yeah.
So whilst you're probably hitting the accelerator all the time, and that can lead to administrative errors or jumping to things too quickly, they've got the cautiousness to hit the brakes and go, I'm doing this quickly, but I'm doing it right. And that tends to lead to quite high performance and not getting...
Because the first 4 metrics you mentioned there, I think, are reasonably, like we've found quite a lot of people with that.
Yeah.
But then we quite often, Steve and I look at them and go, the urgency is really low. And then you go, Jesus. And we already know what that means, which is what you said, is they're going to struggle to keep up the pace because we, generally in our business, we move so fast. It's a bit of a cracking pace. But that doesn't mean it has to be 90, which is
no, it
news.
doesn't.
It's going to be just 60.
You kind of want it moderate to high, right? It's someone that's driven to move things forward at a reasonable pace, but it doesn't have to be a million miles an hour, 90th percentile.
Are you seeing in recent times, so we've got, post-COVID with this definitely a more difficult jobs market, tighter, it just seems to be a tighter time to get talent. So are you seeing people using your tool, the Caliper tool, via Talogy more? Or is it the same? Or have you got more agents coming to you, for example?
It's a mixed bag.
Okay.
I think the competition for talent often leads to just get them in the seat, which is a blessing and a curse. So you're taking a higher risk if you don't run something like this. So you can't stand around waiting a week for a Caliper to come in, that sort of thing. You might lose it to competition agent down the road.
We have suffered from that.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yep.
Yeah.
Taken too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want to rush through this because the curse of getting it wrong, and I'm sure you've been through this pain many times through the journey, is now we've got to deal with this low performer potentially, or someone that doesn't enjoy coming to work here because they're not suited to this job, and now we have to either exit them or help them move and find something else.
Look, the cost of exit, or let's say with the wrong position, I don't think it's ever been higher, not in my business career anyway. So if the Caliper can help to alleviate that, just to give everyone an idea, to have the Caliper report done. So the process roughly would be, the person comes in, they feel good, the culture match, we ring you, we say, Steve Fitzsimon's going to do the Caliper report. You send an online link. We prefer them to do it in a controlled environment, such as the boardroom, not at home.
Mm-hmm.
They finish submit. You get the report. You analyze the report. Then you would call us and give your recommendation, which can take 5 minutes or 50 minutes.
Yep.
Depending, because sometimes I find that the tough one, like the line ball ones,
they're the tough ones.
Oh, they're the tough ones because you really want to fill the role. How many of those do you reckon we've stuffed up?
I think it depends on the day.
No, but come on.
And the role. No, heaps.
Oh.
But the flip side of that is
we've had
there's
a few
been
goodies
some
too.
goodies.
Yeah, true.
So,
and what does that cost?
$500 for an assessment, the report generation, and the verbal consultation on the phone. Yeah, plus GST.
Yeah.
But to give some perspective of the typical time frame, it's a guaranteed 1 business day turnaround.
Yeah, and it takes a candidate. I think when I did mine, just from memory, it took me about maybe an hour and a quarter or an hour or something like that.
It's changed a lot since you've done it.
Okay.
We've probably been through 5 versions since you last did it, to be honest. But now we're sitting around 45 minutes for someone with a high urgency.
Yes.
Gets through it pretty quick.
Yeah.
And someone with a lower urgency, it's about an hour to do. So
would you see, just as a question popped in my head, would there be benefit, given I did mine 20 years ago, would there be any benefit in redoing it?
There is some benefit, but your personality is pretty stable over time once you hit the age of 25.
What about my emotions? I don't feel very stable. I'm
Yeah.
kidding. That's a joke.
That's more a you thing than a Caliper thing, though. But
Jokes, mate, jokes. No, I'm kidding.
There is benefit in doing. We do see some change over time. So I redid mine a couple of years ago after 7 years in the business.
Okay.
I had changed my accommodation, which is my service motivation, went from 55 down to 5.
Wow. What?
Apparently, I became less of a nice guy. But
what do you think that's about?
I don't know what that's about. I think I had also transitioned into more leadership management roles, and so I was more focused on outcomes than just people purely, and that had an impact over time.
Mm.
I also found that my empathy at the same time went up slightly. right? So it's different from accommodation, which is I want to help, I want to look after you, give you service. Empathy is can I understand you and identify what you're thinking and read your subtle communication dynamics.
Yeah.
And that went up a little bit, right? So we recommend every 3 to 5 years.
All right, I'm
redo
definitely
it.
going to do mine.
You're definitely due.
Because, you know, I did mine 20 years ago, and one of the things now, 20 years in real estate, it's kind of hard to maintain the rage.
Yeah.
If for want of a better term, that you had when you're in your mid-30s, you're hungry, you know, you just do anything, you're out until midnight doing deals. Whereas now I'm kind of like, I'm more interested in doing some stuff with my son, you know.
Yeah.
So I'd be still interested to see whether my urgency is that at 99.
I think your urgency would still be pretty high. But
Yes.
To be honest, no one ever transforms, right? You never go, oh, wow, this is a different guy. You might say, okay, that's shifted a little bit.
Yeah,
and what that provides is a little bit more of a refreshed self-awareness of, okay, what should I be doing and what should I be working on?
And
also.
so you just said a really key term I want to pick up on, self-awareness. So one of the things about Caliper, when we ask candidates or existing team members to complete the Caliper, they can become a little bit defensive. And why do I have to do that? And one of the fantastic things I got out of Caliper personally was self-awareness of going, oh, holy hell, wow, you know, everything my wife says about is true. And so therefore
we get that a lot.
Yeah. So therefore we need to have, and what it was all about was building having the team and having support around each skill set so that we could be the best we can at what we're really good at. So again, if you don't know what you're good at, self-awareness, how can you possibly build a structure, neurosystem, business, if you don't know what, you know what I'm saying? If you don't know what the self-awareness piece is. So
it's about half the work we do is actually running existing teams through our assessment tools and then providing them with feedback to raise their self-awareness. Because you'll probably find most people just keep doing what they're doing. And that's really what these tools measure, what comes most naturally to you. We revert back to that when we're under pressure, which is at work in this industry all the time, basically. So if we can raise the self-awareness around, well, this is how you're likely to behave. Is that productive or unproductive? Is that driving your performance or holding you back? And if it's holding you back, what are we going to do about that? You're going to have to make a conscious effort to do it. So people run the tool, particularly in this industry, they'll do it for team building purposes. Let's all understand what each of us brings to the table. Let's make sure we're working effectively together. But from an individual standpoint, I think everyone should do, whether it's Caliper, whether it's Hogan, whether it's any tool out there on the market, is going through it and gaining self-awareness around what are my strengths for this role and my next role potentially. If you're trying to build teams, you want to give people a career path of where they might suit next, whether it's in your business or not. This is what you need to know around what you bring naturally and what you could possibly do to work on areas that don't come so naturally to you.
And I think, you know, currently we have a dozen or so in the team that have not done a Caliper yet, but will do the Caliper in the coming weeks as discussed. And that is realistically all about knowing their strengths so that we can help, you know, position them towards the next challenge in the business, their next step up the rung, you know, et cetera. And their career progression, really.
Yeah.
And there's some really, some of the Calipers I've seen recently, I'm like, wow, that's some seriously good talent and they could really do anything. What's funny is they don't actually know that by looking at the graphs, but I do because
you've been doing it so long.
Yeah. So I'm like, wow, that person could do anything in the business. So
I think one of the coolest things MRE ever did was we ran everyone through the assessment, and then Talogy came in and presented your entire team and said, here's who you've got. You know, here's the people that are maybe in a property investment manager role that could potentially work in sales. You know, this might suit them better, or vice versa.
Yeah.
But then also, here are your future managers or leaders in the business. And I think that's beneficial twofold. One is you can go, okay, we really need to groom this talent and foster them and help them develop. But you can also give them a pathway, because often it's, you know, where do I go from here? From an individual contributor role, is there space for me to step up? You can tell people, hey, we see a future for you. We see potential. Here's how you get to that next level by running a team analysis project. So I think I really enjoyed that project when we came and did that.
Yeah, and it would be great to do that again, maybe, I don't know, later this year, There's also, for anyone listening, there's also the next opportunity in Caliper, which is not just the individual reports for team, but there's accreditation. So is that worth touching on? Like, just very quickly, you run Caliper is the way I look at it, it's such a deep tool with so many little nuances and distinctions that you offer quite an intensive 2 or 3 day course where a business of, say, 70 to 100 people might want to have somebody in their team, probably in the HR space, who can read those reports like they were a Talogy /Caliper, like they were yourself,
Yeah.
So we've got Sally at the moment doing that, and maybe you could talk about that for a minute.
I mean, if you're going to be using the tools pretty regularly, or you're hiring pretty regularly, you want to do some internal work, you have an internal resource that could become an expert in the tool, absolutely do that. I mean, it's not 3 days anymore. It's 3 2.5 hour sessions. We've changed it up there.
Yeah, okay.
But the idea is that this person can read a Caliper report like one of our consulting team can, but then have a meaningful conversation with a hiring manager or with the principal or with an individual about what those results mean. The added benefit for an agency is it costs less, because you don't need the consultant from our side to do that. So there's a huge saving in terms of the cost of the product.
What size team do you think typically you would see the accreditation being required, or of benefit?
Probably if you've got over 40 staff. Depends on how what your attrition rate is.
I was going to
say
so 50 and more.
Yeah, 40 to 50. Yeah. That's where it starts to become, okay, we're using this regularly enough that
weekly.
Yeah, well, maybe even less. But the way I work it out is if I would use enough calipers per year, and it would save me money to have someone accredited in the tool, because the cost of the accreditation is $2,500. If I'm going to save more than that throughout the year, we may as well get someone internally accredited.
Where do you save though? Does the Caliper report for each individual become cheaper because you've got someone accredited?
Yeah. Like $200 per unit. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well.
Oh, there you go.
Well, no, we're charging you well over, but
Mate, well, there's a reason you've been able to build the brand. I've paid for it.
You're getting the regular. I'm not doing that to you.
Just jokes.
But yeah, having someone internally. So we have some clients that will be logging into our online portal all the time, going, "Oh, let's have a look at this team. Let's have a look at this manager and this and their direct report, and see why we might be having some clash here, or can we get them together to talk about how they fit, similar to you and your first experience with it, right?" So that's why people go.
Because I was completely skeptical.
Yeah.
One other thing, you are trained in what? So just for the listeners, So we're talking about psychometric testing.
Yes.
It's psychology. It's science. I'm an absolute advocate. It's a science.
Yeah.
So what is your?
I'm not. Like our team, our consulting team that delivers the work, they're all organisational psychologists.
Right.
The people that develop these tools are scientists and org psychs and PhDs and so on.
Yes.
The Caliper tool, I think, was built in 1961.
Yep.
It's been refined continually since. So generally when they engage with our team, they're dealing with an org psych. When they're talking about profiles, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's a pretty high level of.
Yeah.
That's the point I was trying to get across. It's
So the internal HR person will probably never be at the level of a Caliper consultant, right? But it's effective. We've seen it proven effective. Most clients that are over that sort of 50 mark do go down that path.
And if our internal accredited person got a little bit stuck, they would just jump on the phone to you guys anyway. And
exactly.
You've always been super collaborative and helpful and available along the journey as well.
Okay.
What about you, Steve? You got what else?
My thing is,
I can see you busting there.
Well, I'm not busting. I'm just thinking it from an outsider who perhaps hasn't used these tools in their business before, and then they're looking at exploring them. If you said, "Okay, I'm going to come into your office and you've got 25 staff, and I'm going to run you all through Caliper and then do a report," the time frame that would take from that person, you're looking at the 25 times an hour.
An hour per person,
an hour per person. And then once they've got the report, you'll be able to create when you've got all the individual reports, you're able to then create the overall office and then present back to them. That should all happen within, a week or two.
Yeah, generally.
So it's a pretty quick way to analyse where your group's at.
Yes.
And how also you can take the business forward.
Yeah. The other key piece, by the way, is if you're going to run your entire business through is you have to give the individuals that have done the assessment some form of feedback, right? You have to give them a report or a debrief, whether that's in a group environment or an individual environment. The risk is everyone feels like they're being tested and their job's on the line. So some of the blunders we've seen over the years is, hey, we're running you through the Caliper test. Don't call it that.
Right.
It's the Caliper questionnaire or the Caliper assessment.
I think, like, just on that point, I read a fantastic book over Christmas called Wellbeing at Work, Gallup.
Yep.
And that is all based on the original Strengths Finder science, out of the US, probably about the same time. I'm thinking I might have been a bit earlier than the Caliper, which was in the 60s. I think strengths-based might have been 30s or 40s, not sure. But again, it's about enhancing the environment and enhancing what the team can do together and enhancing what individual achieve. That's the big thing I got out of it. It's definitely not about putting you on the spot or making your life harder. It's about actually making your life easier.
It's getting the messaging right.
So
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So we've built a book of scripts basically of how to launch a program like this. We'll often come in and we'll talk to the team and go, here's why we're doing this. Here's what's in it for you. Here's how your results are going to be used. So anyone that whether they use Talogy tools or anyone else, is just be really careful with that, because if you don't do it right, inevitably there is someone in the business that goes, why is this happening? I can see it in their personality profile, right, of why they're freaking out about it. Managing that communication is really important. And if you're going to ask someone to dedicate an hour of their time to do this, is they want to see the results. You don't have to give them the full Caliper report that you would see as business leaders, but we have reports that are designed for individuals that they can interpret it. It gives some value to them around their strengths, around some development opportunities that they could focus on. So I think that's a key piece if you're going to do it for your whole agency.
Yeah, I think, and like just referring to our example, we were super transparent with our Caliper, weren't we? I mean, everyone sort of knew everyone's, and we actually had them on the table and we're all having a look, and he's good at that, and we really, there was no hiding the facts of.
No, I think the challenge.
And I reckon that worked for us.
Yeah, I think there's two things that I sort of see from the bits. One is, if we look at what's happened when we've had the reports and brought them back to existing staff members, I think they are more open once they've read it. They know that they're actually looking at a mirror and they're seeing how it can benefit, especially when you're also looking at their bosses. And we're open about that sort of interaction to try and get that there. I think in the recruitment stage, though, then that's also something that when you're hiring somebody and they are asked to do a psychometric test, some of them are thrilled by that because they're thinking this business is really switched on. This business is really, they might have heard about it. Others fear it and sort of run away from it. And so you get a mixed result there because of the messaging, again, when you're actually talking to them that first time. So I just think that getting that messaging right at any stage, I think, is really crucial.
But if you're listening to this and you wanted to do this in your business, Shaun would help you with all that.
I think so.
Yeah. I've got another question. I'm desperate to ask this one.
Please.
I was told originally that, and this was selling me into using my very first Caliper profile, and David Brown, he won't care if I name him. David Brown ran this fantastic company called Human Equity, a business coaching company. I think he's doing other things now. And he said to me that basically by the age of, I think it was either 6 or 7, something like that, but basically as a child, your traits, which are part of the Caliper traits, are set in stone, within reason, are set in stone for life. Is that true?
I don't have a study, but I don't believe that's true. Okay. No, not at 6 or 7. I mean, if you think about the growth of the brain and neuroplasticity, we tend to find your brain stops developing around the age of 25.
Okay.
So it's all downhill from there, essentially.
Steve's actually was 12.
Yes, I did hear that. Yeah.
We did a test on him.
Yeah. That does make sense. It showed up in his Caliper profile.
I don't understand.
No.
So maybe it's by late teens?
By late teens. And often I get asked this, can you run my young son or daughter through the Caliper profile and tell them what they should do at uni, that kind of thing?
Gosh. No.
Yes, we can, but it is subject to change as the brain continues to grow and develop.
Would you take that on?
I would do it, but it's
With
always
reservation.
with an asterisk there
Yeah.
of, this person may change over time as they continue to
That's so
develop
risky, I
into an
reckon.
adult.
Telling them what
influence
they...
them.
Huh?
Could influence them. Do you know what I mean? Like
Oh,
they
yeah,
get a
yeah.
report on themselves that tells them that they
Yeah.
should be more interested in this type of role.
I think at that age, at a young age, a better exercise might be an interests inventory. What piques my interest? What are some of the things that get me excited about learning about at that age? But when you're hitting about 18, we run a lot of graduate programs
Right.
at Talogy with using a different instrument. That's where we start to see it becoming a bit more predictive because they're more closer to being adults.
Sure.
Right? They're not quite there yet, but they're closer to being adults. So I would say if you want to do it at a younger age, do it with caution, and there might be tools better equipped to do it and guide.
Because my wife calls me a man-child. So
Again, not a caliper thing.
So if I did the graduate, if I did the graduate caliper, would that show up?
Probably.
I
yeah.
would.
I don't think we need to do it though.
No,
I think we've already got the diagnosis from your wife. Yeah.
Okay. So,
but yeah, I would say just to that question of personality traits around 6 or 7. I think the research tend to suggest it's around that age of 25.
Okay.
So a lot of people hire people younger than that. So 21, 22 years old it's still highly predictive, but I'd want to be reassessing that person a bit more frequently.
Yeah.
Every couple of years.
That's
as they
really
continue
interesting.
to
We've
develop.
got a few staff that might have been assessed when they were 20 and now they're
That's sort of-
27 and
that's
working in the
sort of
business. And
where I'm thinking.
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Would be interesting to overlay the other ones. Yeah.
Perfect. Shaun, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Great chat.
Yeah, I love what you guys do. Like now here face to face, thanks so much for all the support and all of the long chats on, all the little things that we've done over the year. But overall, it's been fantastic. So
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for making the time, mate. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.